Hello and welcome to CIVIC IC's final all candidates debate here in North Vancouver. Thank you for taking the time to join us. We are pleased to have with us candidates from the ridings of North Vancouver Lonsdale and North Vancouver Seymour today. And I'm going to introduce the candidates through alphabetical order. And we have from North Vancouver Seymour with us, Mr. Jim Hansen from the BC NDP. We have Ms. Jane Thornthwaite from the BC Liberal Party. Jamie Webb from the Independent Party. And from the North Vancouver Lonsdale riding, we have Mr. Kimball Carew from the Communist Party of Canada. Mr. Ryan Conroy from the BC Green Party. Mr. Craig Keeper from the BC NDP. And Ms. Naomi Yamamoto from the BC Liberals. The program today is, well, first of all, I should apologize for sending out a notice earlier saying that the event starts at 3 or 3:30. We had booked this place from months ago, and later, just recently, they let us know that there was a conflict in the schedule, and we had to change the time from 3 to 4. So our apologies for that and for the inconvenience. Tonight's program, we're going to start with introductions by our candidates. Every candidate will speak for about 3 minutes. Then we will hear some brief introduction of the Civic Association of Iranian Canadians, otherwise known as CIVIC IC, by two of our CIVIC IC representatives. And we'll follow with asking questions from the candidates. These questions for the first part of the event will be questions that have been sent to us by some of you and other constituents, and we'll be asking the candidates those questions. Then we'll have a brief introduction by the CIVIC IC youth representatives, and we'll have a short break for coffee and refreshments. For the second part of the program, there will be open mic, so if you have questions, you can come up here and ask your questions directly from the candidates, and we'll go over the rules of that once we get to that part of the program. So for now, I'm going to ask the candidates to introduce themselves, and please, 3 minutes each candidate, and we'll go to start from this side of the table going.
Thank you so much, and I just want to thank everybody for coming out. My name is Jamie Webb. I'm the independent candidate for North Vancouver Seymour. For the past 7 years, I've worked for the United Nations Environment Program, working on the links between species and ecosystems and climate change. Prior to that, I worked at the World Bank on sustainable land management projects in sub-Saharan Africa. I never really intended to get into politics, and when I moved back to BC with my family, I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old little boy, I started to look at the political system in BC, and I began to get a bit disillusioned. I wasn't happy with the extent of public participation, the difficulty with actually accessing information on what was going on behind the closed doors, how budgets were decided, things like that. So after a long, hard discussion with the family, I decided to run as an independent candidate. It's been a fantastic journey so far. I've met some wonderful people. My main platform issues, the issues that are really close to my heart for this election, of course, the environment, what that means for North Vancouver Seymour in terms of tanker traffic, the upcoming revision of the Mount Seymour Provincial Park Management Plan, the preservation of the last few stands of old growth forests we have, so those are very close to my heart. I'm also very interested in improving the funding situation for schools. I think schools need to be budgeted on a 5 to 10 year cycle rather than an annual budgeting cycle. I think this will allow schools to actually focus on what's important, which is educating our children, including the children with special needs, rather than trying to plan how they're going to overcome shortcomings or spend extra money. And I also am a very strong advocate of improved rights for seniors and for disabled persons. I think that the post of advocate for seniors should be an independent post, not tied to the government. And I believe that there should be appointed an independent advocate for seniors. So those are my main issues, but I'm really looking forward to answering your questions and digging a bit more into that. So thank you very much for organizing this.
Thank you, Jamie. And one thing I'd like to note is we have Ida and Perya here from CIVIC IC who will be keeping the time. And we have 2 cards. We will be flashing the green card 30 seconds before the time ends. And then the not so friendly red card 10 seconds before the time. And so please pay attention to that too.
Hi there, Ryan Conroy, Green Party of British Columbia. I was born in Eastern Canada, lived around all parts of Canada growing up, lived in Fort McMurray for a while, in Ottawa. I've always been quite exposed to politics, always aware of what's going on. Never had a lot of involvement through my 20s, but at one point I came into contact with the Green Party of BC. I really like what they stand for. I think we need to kind of remove a lot of the bureaucratic solutions and focus on community-focused solutions. We have a comprehensive plan to make this happen. A lot of the other parties are going to kind of, oh, we want to solve climate change, and they're going to take a little piece of the carbon tax, or they're going to do this or that. But we actually have a vision for a different society, a more inclusive society, where instead of focusing, instead of seniors saying, we've reached a point where now we need help, instead, school will always be available to people in our society. We believe in community schools, so somebody, as our system is set up now, people achieve a certain level of education, and then they basically walk away from it, and they really don't have any availability to retrain themselves. So this could be, they could work in a field where technology changes. Now they're not able to keep up with the current technology. They're going to try to hold back change. Older people that maybe feel they're just clinging on to what they have left at the end of a long career. Well, if we had an educational system and a society that valued people's education, their learning, what they have to offer other people within the society at all times, if we reduce the bureaucratic overhead, a lot of times government gets in the way of citizens acting with one another to create a society for each other. And to drive people to drive their own change. So we look at things from a bigger picture perspective. We don't think we're going to fix healthcare, which is half of our provincial budget, by throwing a few dollars at it. We think we need to get people eating healthier local foods. We need a more active population. We need a more active population. Healthier local foods to be available to everybody. So more affordability, more availability. This is what's going to drive a healthier population. This is how the Green Party would see our health costs going down. It doesn't mean we wouldn't support our healthcare system or anything like that. We just think that spending money is not always the solution to our problems. Sometimes it takes foresight and long-term planning. This integrates with almost all our policies, our energy policies. We want to move towards alternative energy. It requires a lot of change at a very quick level, and we want to make it happen. We say no pipelines, let's develop wind farms, geothermal.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for being here, because it's an awfully nice day outside. My name is Naomi Yamamoto. I'm the BC Liberal candidate. I've had the pleasure of serving probably most of you for the last 4 years as your MLA. I've also had the pleasure of being in the cabinet for the last 4 years as well. I thought I'd tell you a little bit about my background. I was raised in North Vancouver. I went to elementary school in North Vancouver, went to high school in North Vancouver, and then went out to UBC where I completed my studies in film and television. I came back to the North Shore. Actually, I never left, but I started worked for my family businesses. They were Japan Camera, one of our photos. I don't know if any of you went to them at Capilano Mall or Lynn Valley Center, but I spent a few years there learning how to run a business. Then I started up my own business in North Vancouver. For over 20 years, I had a graphic design and printing business. And I can tell you that I do know what it takes to hire people and employ others. And I know that one of the things I'm proud of about the BC Liberal government is our track record on being very friendly to small businesses. So the small business tax rate, we dropped from 4.5% when we came into government in 2001 to 2.5% now, and we're looking at lowering it even further. But I have to say that it's not just a privilege to serve you, it's a real honor and privilege to live in British Columbia. British Columbia has done very, very well in the last decade. We have built things like the Canada Line. We've built the Sea to Sky Highway. We've built, and we will be building and completing shortly, the North Shore Mental Health Facility, the Hope Centre at Lions Gate Hospital. And I'm proud of the investments that we've made in our schools, 7 new universities created in BC, and record spendings in our post-secondary system. I could tell you as well that I'm particularly proud of our record with respect to fiscal management. And under the BC Liberals, we missed some targets, and I can tell you that the 2008-2009 financial crisis didn't help us any. We didn't want to have to balance the budget on the backs of British Columbians during those tough economic times, and we used that opportunity to match funds with the federal stimulus money that came into the province at that time. So there was $500 million invested in British Columbia, and I think we should be very proud of all those investments. What we didn't do was run up the operating costs of government. We kept the size of government small, we kept taxes low, so that we don't have a burden of debt being passed on to the next generation. And for those of you who have been here for generations, you've seen this, but our province has been built by people coming from all over the country. In fact, a quarter of the people living in BC right now were born outside of Canada, 1/4. In the Lower Mainland, it's just less than 1/2 of the people who are living here now that were born outside of Canada, So we've got a very diverse, and we've got a very strong community, not just in North Vancouver, but in BC. And I think we should be celebrating the accomplishments and the diversity that we have in British Columbia. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for organizing. And thank you to my fellow candidates as well as all of you for coming. I know it's a nice day and everybody would probably rather be outside. My name is Jane Thornthwaite, and I am the MLA for North Vancouver Seymour. And I'm also the Parliamentary Secretary for Student Support and Parent Engagement. I've been your MLA for 4 years, and before that I was on school board. I have 3 children. I've grown up in the North Shore my entire life, particularly in North Vancouver Seymour. I've been here for 23 years. I have 3 children, 2 who have already graduated from Windsor Secondary, and my youngest who is in grade 9 at Windsor Secondary. So I know very, very well how it's like to raise a family and be successful in this area of this beautiful province in North Vancouver. I've also been to every school as an MLA as well as a school trustee. I've been to every senior center in the riding. I've visited every social club like the Legions as well as the Lions Club, the Rotaries, etc. And I know this riding very, very well. I love my job. I think I have one of the best jobs because I love helping people. And I'm very, very constituency driven in my riding. People know that. They know where I am. They know how to get a hold of me. I'm accountable. I have monthly MLA reports that I send out every month so people know what I'm doing. I do my twice monthly Join Jane coffee meetings, both at Parkgate as well as the library, Lynn Valley Library, so everybody can come, no appointment necessary. If those don't work, just make an appointment with me anytime, anywhere. I'm very, very accessible. So why do I think that you should vote for me? Because you will get very, very good representation from me as your MLA. And I totally believe that the most important job of an MLA is to represent their constituents very, very well. Why should you support the BC Liberal Party? My colleague Naomi Yamamoto has explained many of the reasons. We have been in government for over a decade, and admittedly, there have been mistakes made. But what we have done is we've had the big things right. And during the 2008-2009 economic downturn, British Columbia came out pretty good. And we are recovering pretty good. And we will continue to do well into the future because we have the right things going for us. Taxes are low, we encourage small businesses to grow, we encourage investment, and we encourage companies to come here to invest and provide jobs. So for those reasons and many others that I'm sure that will come out throughout the afternoon today, I would encourage you to vote for Jane for North Vancouver Seymour. Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Jim Hansen, and I'm the BC NDP candidate in the provincial constituency of North Vancouver Seymour. It's an honor to stand before you today, and thank you to the organizers of this event. Thank you to the candidates for coming out on this sunny day, and above all of that, thank you to each and every one of you to come out to make sure that you have seen and heard from your candidates. So who am I, and why am I? Why do I want to be the MLA for North Vancouver Seymour? I was born in Lionsgate Hospital in 1961. I grew up in the local area. I went to elementary school at Blue Ridge and high school at Windsor. I went to SFU and I graduated from UBC Law School in 1984. I'm a self-employed lawyer. I know what it takes to build a successful business from scratch. I know what it takes to make a payroll every month. I'm married to my wife Ruth, who's with us today. She's a self-employed realtor right here in North Vancouver, and we have two children, Robert and Elizabeth, both of whom go to my alma mater, Windsor Secondary. We're members of the North Shore Winter Club, and my son plays hockey there. Both of my parents are elderly, and they both live on the North Shore, as did my grandparents before them. When I think of North Vancouver, I think of the North Vancouver of my childhood. And when I had to respond and assert my influence with respect to the expansion of the Kinder Morgan pipeline, I thought of some of my earliest memories of being with my mother down at Cates Park, looking at the marine life. I've always loved the nature of this area, and I think it should be preserved for our children and for our grandchildren. So why do I want to be your MLA? Well, during the last 12 years, I've observed the practices of the BC Liberal government. And I've observed their priorities. And ladies and gentlemen, I've observed the declining respect for the BC Liberals by the citizens of British Columbia. It saddens me. It really saddens me when I realize so few people have any respect for the BC Liberals. And I know we can do better. We can have better priorities. And I believe that I can contribute to a better government. I believe that my experience as a father and as a businessman, as a lawyer, equips me to make a contribution to a better government with better priorities. And I look forward to asserting my influence on your behalf in a better provincial government. Thank you very much.
Good Good afternoon. My name is Craig Keating. I'm the BC NDP candidate here in North Vancouver Lonsdale. And first off, I want to thank the organizers, the CIVIC IC, for organizing this event today. I'd certainly like to thank Silver Harbor for giving up its hall this afternoon. And I'd certainly like to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of a beautiful sunny day to come out and hear about what's going on in this election. And I think it's particularly important that you're here during this election process because I happen to believe that this may be one of the most important elections in British Columbia's history. Because never before in the history of this province has the contrast between a government that is out of gas and out of ideas and offers nothing but more of the same been starker versus another option, the BC NDP, which offers a clear program of positive change for the better for British Columbia. The question that must be asked as you step into the voting booth is, do you want more of the same or do you want change for the better? And what does more of the same mean? More of the same means a government under whose watch debt has grown faster in this province than in any other government in the history of British Columbia. It is a government which says in this budget that it has balanced the budget, when in fact that's not the case. And in fact, in 7 of 12 budgets it has brought in have all been deficit budgets. It is a government which says that it has introduced a successful jobs plan, but yet since that jobs plan has been introduced, 32,000 jobs have been lost. More of the same means a government that talks about families first, but in fact has seen British Columbia with all its diversity and riches become a province in which absolute inequality is higher than any other province in Canada, and when in 7 of 8 last years we have the highest rate of child poverty in Canada. More of the same means in this riding a government that watches jobs in the film industry, which sustain so many families here, walk to other provinces, jobs in the shipbuilding industry, not going down to allied shipyards at the foot of the Second Narrows, but going instead to Singapore to build a new sea bus. It is the wrong priorities, it is a failed record, and they only promise more of the same. Change for the better, my friends, means a clear focus on 3 priorities. 1, doing what the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, the BC Chamber of Commerce has said is the #1 priority for BC to be economically successful in a global world. And that is investing in skills training and advanced education. And we have promised that. And that will make BC competitive on the world stage, and we can do more with our resources because of that. Change for the better means using skills training to create family-supporting good jobs to reduce inequality in British Columbia. And change for the better, my friends, means defending British Columbia's environment by saying no to Kinder Morgan, no to the Enbridge pipeline, and saying we take climate change seriously. On May the 14th, I urge you to vote for me, Craig Keating, for the BC NDP here in North Vancouver Lonsdale. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kimball Cariou. I'm the candidate for the Communist Party in North Vancouver Lonsdale. You don't necessarily need to remember my name. Just remember I'm the name at the top of the ballot when you go to vote. I could use your help. This is the first time that our party has had a candidate in this area in over 20 years, but we have a long history here. I met someone earlier who heard the leader of our party speak in this area back in 1957. And we've had many candidates in this area over the years, and our party is growing now and returning to run candidates in areas where we haven't been for a while, and bringing a different kind of message to voters in this riding and across the province and across the country. And it's a message that says we do need change. We do need to throw at the right-wing parties that are ruining our country. Parties that tell, great big fibs about their record. I was surprised to find out the Liberals built the Sea to Sky Highway, for example, in their last term in office here. I seem to remember driving that highway before Gordon Campbell got elected. More significantly, though, the question of economic crisis, environmental crisis, social crisis around this planet, these are things that are much bigger than any one province or any one government. These are things that are affecting billions of people around the world. And anybody who thinks that you can elect a government here which will change things overnight in this province and that will somehow be isolated from what's going on in the rest of the world, you're kidding yourselves. We live in a world where we're moving every day closer to climate catastrophe, and yet we're spending $1 trillion a year on preparations for war across this planet, including in Canada. The military budget of this country is $25 billion. We live in a society here in BC where we have thousands of people homeless on the streets, where poverty is increasing, the gap between the rich and poor is getting wider every day, and yet we have a government whose first act when they got elected was to turn over $2 billion a year from the provincial treasury to the richest people in this province and the biggest corporations in this province with their tax breaks. I say it's time to roll those tax breaks back, to put that money into funding our schools properly, into funding health care, social assistance, all the programs that people need. It's time to put that money into really serious actions to protect the environment of this province. Why can't we do things, for example, like buy 1,000 new transit buses in the Lower Mainland region? Why can't we build homes for homeless people and save the taxpayers a lot of money? And healthcare costs and policing costs. We need to completely reverse the priorities of this government and this society. And frankly, it's not enough to say we're going to have some small practical changes by electing the NDP. That might be a step forward. What we really need is radical, fundamental change in the way that this entire society is run. So I encourage you to read our pamphlet, come and talk to me afterwards, ask me your questions, and thank you for hearing me.
So the first question is an environmental question. Please keep the answers to 2 minutes each, and our timekeepers will remind you of the time. The first question is an environmental question, and it's asking, what should our goals be as a province with respect to reducing greenhouse gases, and how do they relate to policies on hydroelectric dams, coal exports, LNG development, solar, wind power, and pipelines, for instance? I know it's a fairly broad question, but it should give us a good idea of where the candidates stand. And for the questions, we would ask each of the representatives of the same party to pick one of the candidates to answer the questions, so we get to hear more from each party. Thank you.
Thank you. In terms of reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, of course this is something that's very close to my heart. I've been working with countries around the world on how they can reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. There are such a broad range of models that BC should be looking at. Everything from the European Union that has a full European Union carbon cap and trade system and carbon trade, to the carbon tax we have here. And the reality is, not any one system is really sufficient if we want to reduce our emissions. I agree with the carbon tax. I think the carbon tax does do something to actually reduce emissions. I think that it could be designed much better, but I think that as one element of a greenhouse gas reduction system, it's very good. I think we also need to be looking at, when we're in BC, what BC industry can actually do to reduce their emissions in a way that is in line with what global industry standards are doing. A great example is the Cement Sustainability Initiative. Now, I've been hearing from some colleagues that the carbon tax is terrible because it's disadvantaging our cement industry. Well, the fact of the matter is the 24 biggest companies in the world got together and they said, we want to reduce our impact on the environment. We want to reduce the emissions associated with producing cement. Let's sit down together and come up with a plan. And they did. They looked at every step in the process. They looked at shipping, they looked at production, they looked at how it was being used, and they came up with a plan. Do you know how many of those 24 companies are BC-based? None. I think our government needs to support industry participation in some of these global sustainability initiatives which have been proven to work to reduce emissions. We need to pair that with a carbon tax rather than looking at a simple carbon tax as the only way to reduce our emissions. Thank you.
As Jamie pointed out, we need to do more to stop climate change than just putting a tax. We have two key initiatives in place right now in BC. There's the carbon tax, which now is about $30 a ton, and the Pacific Carbon Trust, which I'm personally favor on the tax perspective. Carbon taxes, they're very transparent. You know exactly how much you're paying. They're more likely to have a direct impact on your behavior. What we're seeing now in BC is about a 10% reduction in individuals' use of fuel as a result of the carbon tax. But the problem is, we're not changing our government's direction. We're still talking about LNG fracking. I'm sorry, but natural gas is a fossil fuel just the same as oil or gas. We're looking at the Site C dam is going to come in. So a lot of people think that hydro is clean power. Well, these big hydro dams are not clean at all. They stop all the natural material that's in the river at the dam. It sits there, it rots. Heavy metals that are contained in everything accumulate and then over time start leaching down the dam. So the purpose of the Site C dam, as was admitted by Christy Clark in the leader debate, is to actually fuel the LNG gas fracking. Then 50% of that energy from the LNG gas fracking is going to, by pipe to Alberta to fuel the tar sands. Then they're going to send the oil from the tar sands back to us. So what we're hearing from both the Liberals and the NDP is a little bit of lip service to the problem and not addressing the issues, and this is the problem. The NDP cannot claim that Made in BC reviews are the same as a change in direction. The Green Party drive towards clean energy and end our dependence on fossil fuels. That's how we're going to stop climate change, real action, and not just talking about things and not just Made in BC reviews. Thank you.
Well, I'm very, very proud of the leadership that BC took in 2009 to introduce the carbon tax. The first carbon tax in North America, the first jurisdiction to have a carbon tax. The NDP screamed and cried and campaigned against it until I think they realized that it was a good carbon tax, or a good tax. The carbon tax that we collect from British Columbians goes to reducing taxes in other areas. So it's reducing personal taxes, reducing small business tax rates. It's a tax that has been proven to actually significantly alter behavior. So I have a different figure, Ryan, 17% reduction in per capita fossil fuel usage or consumption in British Columbia, significantly less or significantly more of a reduction than anywhere else in Canada, and I think that's due to the carbon tax. I can tell you that our kids expect us to take care of the environment. Our kids expect us to be fuel efficient, and our kids expect us to invest in energy efficient projects in our schools. But we have to take a balanced approach to climate action. We have to take a balanced approach to investment in British Columbia. So I can tell you that I'm a supporter of Site C. I'm a supporter of hydroelectric dams in general because it's renewable energy. It's the rain. And I think we can be proud of the investment, the legacy that WAC Bennett left us. But I can also tell you that despite what critics said, BC's economy grew with the introduction of the carbon tax. And I think that BC has set an example for the rest of the world.
Thanks very much. I think we have to set the record straight. If anybody in this room believes that we've had a 17% reduction in the use of carbon-based fuels in this province, just go get some facts. We can have a difference of opinion, we can't have a difference of the facts, and those aren't the facts of the matter. The fact of the matter is that the entire carbon tax was predicated in its initial model and is proven to be true on an increase in the use of carbon-based fuels, and that has proven out to be the case. What we need to do is have, in fact, an effective carbon tax system. And the first thing you need to do, and that's what the BC NDP is promising in this election, is use the revenues from the carbon tax not to put it into general revenues to spend on whatever government wants, but to put it into practical solutions to help reduce climate change. And in our case, that means putting revenue from the carbon tax into green transportation, public transportation here in the Lower Mainland, creating a fund to retrofit houses to make them more efficient. That's what the carbon tax should be used for. And we certainly need to join that with the issue that was raised in the question about pipelines. That needs to be a discussion we have with the federal government about whether or not we decide we as a country have a national climate change reduction strategy, which we don't right now. And I think the BC NDP government will fight with the federal government to make sure we do have that. But the second thing is that we have been long opposed to the Enbridge Northern Gateway pipeline. British Columbia takes all of the risks and gets virtually none of the benefits of that. And certainly, we are opposed to seeing Burrard Inlet become a major supertanker port for oil shipments out of British Columbia. I've been to many doors in this community, and I have yet to meet a single person who thinks, along with Premier Clark, that this port here at Burrard Inlet should be placed where supertankers filled with bitumen oil regularly go out of there. And we're opposed to that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, the Liberal fact-free campaign continues. I was also quite surprised by that figure, which I don't think is true either, the 17% per capita reduction. This is not happening. In fact, our use of fossil fuels per capita is increasing in this province. The Site C dam, far from being clean, is to encourage further expansion of the fossil fuel industry in this province. I think every election that we vote in the coming years is much more than just an election for another government. It's a referendum on the future of the human race on this planet. We will not continue to exist on this planet if we enter into the type of catastrophic climate change that's coming upon us as a result of the relentless expansion of the fossil fuel industry, imperialist wars for control of energy resources around the world. These things are killing us all, and they will kill our children and grandchildren unless we put a stop to them. We are in a very desperate situation as a society, and I don't think it's enough to say, well, we'll tinker with various types of carbon taxes, we'll change one policy or another. We need to make a conscious decision that the energy resources of this planet are too scarce and too important to simply leave to big transnational corporations to decide how they're going to develop for the sake of maximum profit. We need to put those resources under public control and use that wealth to fundamentally turn around the direction that our society is going, to create a society which is based on a steep reduction of the amount of greenhouse gas emissions. Yes, that means socialism. That means public ownership of the energy resources, the banking system, the major productive wealth of our society, because those are the tools that we need in order to create a different and better society. And that's the sort of thing that we're going to be voting on in coming elections, including this one.
The next question is an economics question, well, on the subject of the economy, and it's addressed to all of the candidates. If your questions are addressed to a specific candidate or a specific party, please mention that. It's the question of fiscal responsibility. How are you going to maintain the current level, and what is the plan for moving into the future? So this time, maybe we start with the BC Liberal Party and move this way.
The question was on fiscal responsibility, was that?
How are we going to maintain the current level, and what is the plan for moving into the future?
Okay. Well, as you know, the BC Liberal government has just announced as of February a balanced budget. And that balanced budget was confirmed by independent economist Dr. Tim O'Neill from the Bank of Montreal, as well as the budget itself was supported by the not just the North Vancouver Chamber of Commerce, the British Columbia Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Vancouver Board of Trade. So our budget is very clear. It's not what you would call a pre-election budget. It is fiscally responsible. It does have a hold on expenditures. And subsequently, the British Columbia government's financial situation has been reconfirmed by 3 separate bonding agencies as a AAA credit rating. And I think what's really important about the AAA credit rating, because when I first heard that expression, I didn't really know what it meant. But it has been explained to me that one drop of a rating with the AAA credit rating is equivalent to a new hospital. So what we have to do to prevent us from going into being a have-not province with continuous deficits and debt, we have to have a plan moving forward to get rid of the debt and have a balanced budget. And that's what the BC Liberal government is doing right now. So we have a plan not only to reduce the debt And that comes with the investments with LNG, which we just talked about, as well as supporting our resource industries. And that's the plan to get us out of debt and basically make sure that we have the money that we need to sustain and improve our education system, our health system, as well as the social development system that we all hold dear and dear to our hearts here in British Columbia. Thank you.
With next, maybe Jamie Webb, and we change the order every time.
That's great. It's a surprise for us when we're going to come up. Fiscal responsibility. Yeah, I have a number of views on fiscal responsibility. First of all, I don't like the idea of judging whether budgets are balanced or not based on a single year. I think that that's the equivalent of doing the same thing for ourselves, for our households, on a month-to-month basis. I can guarantee you that in December, around Christmas time, my budget is not balanced. But by January, February, it will be again. So this idea of looking at 1 year and saying, is the budget balanced or not, I think that we need to look at what the government's investing in and say, no, let's look at a 3 to 5 year period and balance the budget over that period rather than a single year. I think that there's some issues that need to be based on need, not on the availability of funds. To my mind, those include care for seniors and disabled persons, healthcare, and education. Those issues should be funded on a 5 to 10 year time frame based on what is actually needed. There is no reason for a child who's being educated during an economic slowdown to be disadvantaged compared to their brother or sister who was educated when times were great and money was rolling in. I also believe that we need to look, in terms of achieving fiscal responsibility, at savings in the government. I think we need to take a bit of a step back and say, where are the government operating expenses going? Is there an opportunity to be a bit innovative in the BC government and say, well, rather than paying Microsoft thousands of dollars per computer, can we explore options for open source software? Instead of spending money down to the US to buy licenses, can we employ 2 or 3 IT specialists in Victoria, British Columbians, for less money, and we're creating jobs here. I do believe in the NDP approach to skills training. I'm a bit nervous about how the NDP is going to decide what skills require training, where the funding is going to be directed. I would rather see industry and the economy doing that, but we'll have to wait and see if we get more details from the NDP on how they expect to approach that. Thank you.
Okay, so on the economy, people often see the Green Party in our opposition to fossil fuels, things like pipelines, natural gas fracking as being a bad thing. What they don't realize is that renewable energy is the current energy technology. It's very exciting. People that are technically minded, that are engineers, they should be excited about these things. People that are that want an industry to invest in, we can build a cleaner society that runs on cleaner fuels. The technology is already there and we're just not doing it. When it comes to, say, Site C, it's an $8 billion project that Hydro is chasing after, and again, it's not clean power. It was thought to be clean power 50 years ago, but stopping the water from, or the fish and all the life from flowing through a river, and allowing the leaves and dead animals, things like that, to sit there and rot, releases carbon just the same as if you're building a fuel, or burning a fuel. So what we've done in BC, for $8 billion, we're going to get 600 megawatts out of Site C. Well, there's a company called Finnavara. They want to produce 300 megawatts for 1/10 of the price. And we're telling them they can't do it because we're not allowing private companies to invest in power in BC. This is a huge, if BC Hydro is going to pursue these things, then fine. But what powers our economy as it is now is fossil fuels. And we have other technologies available. We're just not pursuing them in BC. Other places in the world, like Scotland, they're going to have 80% of their energy produced by renewables by 2020. And we're really not doing anything here. We have companies in BC. We have the brain power, but they have to go elsewhere to produce their energy. So We believe in, if BC Hydro is not going to move ahead with this, open it up to private industry, allow investment in renewable energy, and drive our economy with clean power and local economies.
Thank you. This is a very important issue. This is a very important issue, and we should all be engaged. Christy Clark took office 2 years ago. Since then, the provincial debt has gone up $11 billion. The BC Liberals have doubled the provincial debt. And I don't think there's a person in this room who believes that the provincial debt, the budget of last year, is balanced. Not one of you. How could you? Because they balanced that budget by selling off Crown assets. It's as if in our family, sometimes we do spend a little bit too much. It's true. But you know what we do? We put the bills on the table. We don't sell the silverware and then pretend that we didn't overspend. And to stand before us and say that the budget is balanced and that you've been fiscally responsible is what causes ordinary British Columbians to lose respect for government. We must change it. The BC NDP has a plan. It's a realistic plan. It involves moving forward. Tommy Douglas, the founder of our great New Democratic Party, a Baptist minister, brought in 17 balanced budgets. We can do better, ladies and gentlemen. We can do better by having better fiscal management, perhaps even more importantly, we can do better by not standing up in front of fellow citizens and telling a lot of nonsense.
You know, I do have to laugh sometimes when I hear right-wing politicians talk about fiscal responsibility. I'm originally from Saskatchewan. I was there in the 1980s when a right-wing government under Grant Devine came in and talked about saving money. One of the early things they did was sell off all of the equipment to build and maintain the highway system in the province. I was at an auction where that equipment was sold off for 10 cents on the dollar. And the private road builders who had helped fund his election made a huge profit over the following years. But the provincial government ended up wasting hundreds of millions of dollars paying those private operators, far more than they got from the sale of the equipment. So they made some money in the budget in 1 year, and we paid for it for the next decade. You know, the federal deficit, the debt that was such a big issue in the 90s, researchers who really studied the issue found out overwhelming the reason for that was not the wild expansion of social programs that they talked about. It was the reduction of taxes on the wealthy, the corporations, the transfer of wealth to the richest people in our society. That's where debt and deficit of federal and provincial governments comes from in this society. The Gordon Campbell Liberals, when they came in, they cut, as I said earlier, the amount of taxation on the richest people in this province and the biggest corporations by between 1.5 to 2 billion a year, depending on which study you read. I take Vaughn Palmer from The Sun as an expert on that. You know, over the course of their term in office, that is over $20 billion in lost revenue that this province could have used to fund programs, to pay down the debt. So when these parties talk about fiscal responsibility, it's a load of hooey, to be perfectly honest. The only responsible thing to do is to make sure, as some of the other candidates have said, that we really take care of the people who need it most in this society, that we have adequate programs to do that. And that means that we have to begin taking some of that tax revenue back from those who've taken it away from us.